Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for coming to this press conference. The theme for today generally is human capital, children and youths, health and education. But we want to speak particularly about a livable future beyond fossil fuels, because we believe that the extraction and dependence on fossil fuels actually goes contrary to the capacity of nations and the world to build human capital in a way that can really bring the best out of citizens. Equally, in particular, we're also going to speak a bit about a very, very important report that was recently published in Nigeria called An Environmental Genocide. It's a report that looked at counting the human and environmental cost of oil in Bayelsa State of Nigeria. Now, I have with me a very distinguished panel. We're all from Nigeria, and so the examples will be particularly focused on what is going on in Nigeria. Just next to me is Okon. She's the Executive Director of Kabetkache Women Development and Resource Center, one of the topmost feminist groups in Nigeria and in Africa. And her organization recently carried out a medical test, which she'll be speaking about, test on women. And then next to her is Stephen Oduware. Stephen Oduware is the program manager on fossil politics, deals with climate change, biodiversity issues, deforestation issues, impacted community issues. So he will be speaking related to that also. My name is Nimo Bassi. I'm the Director of Health of Mother Earth Foundation, an ecological think tank that looks at the roots of the crisis facing us in terms of energy, fossil fuels, food, and the rest. So today, without much ado, I'm going to turn it over to Okon to speak to us about the assessment that her organization carried out on women who happen to live in a territory where the first oil well was drilled in Nigeria. Okon, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here and share this story from Otuabagi community about Otuabagi women. Otuabagi is a small community, but is very popular and big in terms of the oil economy in Nigeria. Otuabagi is host to 22 oil wells, including the very first oil well in Nigeria. But Otuabagi is still like a bush. It's very impoverished. The community members are poor, the women are poor. They don't even understand what the revenue generated from oil that is derived from their community. Over 6 decades ago, what the revenue is used for. Otuabagi has no health facilities, has no source of clean drinking water, and no source of power supply. The farmlands are polluted by several incidents of oil spillage. The people drink polluted water. In fact, the oil well too is still leaking oil, having been abandoned since 1975. No full decommissioning has been carried out. The community members have felt no impact from government or from the corporations that have extracted oil from that community over several decades ago. Kebet started engaging with these women in 2016. In fact, the women actually resisted because they feel exploited by anybody who goes to their community to talk to them. That is because of the experience they have had over the years. And they also don't want to be deceived by the word development, because they have been deceived over the years. The women have a role play that they use to demonstrate how they have been deceived by the big multinational corporations, and they call it Mama Otuabagi. What is the story about? Corporations went there and promised development. And the community members said, okay, you're bringing development to us. And they allowed them to take the land. So they took the land, they took the resources, they took the people, and they have left the people, particularly the women, with destruction and death. The medical tests we carried out about 1 year ago revealed that 80 women that their red blood cells were collected for analysis. 100% of them have hydrocarbon in their blood. And before this test was carried out, the women had told us, if you cut our body, it is not blood you will see, it is crude oil that you will see. And that test confirmed what the women said. And you can imagine a people that carry crude oil in their blood system because everything about them have been polluted by crude oil. And the people causing the damage do not care about the conditions and the situation of these people. There is no functional health facility. As I said, according to the test, the Colo Creek River contains hydrocarbon. The boreholes, borehole 1, borehole 2, contains hydrocarbon. The food materials, cocoyam, and other crops contain hydrocarbon. And the people live on these things. So that is why we have hydrocarbon in their blood system. And we are using this opportunity to call on the people that have perpetrated this injustice in Nigeria, particularly in Otuabagi and other host communities in the Niger Delta, that enough is enough, that this injustice must stop. We are here amplifying the voices of women in Otuabagi, that they are tired. Because of hydrocarbon, the young women are experiencing early menopause. The women are having stillbirth and other fertility issues. Almost 100% of those tested have symptoms of high blood pressure. The people are just walking corpses in their communities. We call for special medical attention for people in Otuabagi communities. We stand with women in Otuabagi to call for reparations, to call for compensations for years of deprivation, for years of injustice, for years of stolen land, stolen resources. We stand with the women to say this genocide must stop. We use this opportunity in this COP to say that climate finance should be targeted at people and communities such as Otuabagi community. Because when we sit here negotiating climate finance, community members in Otuabagi don't even know what is going on here. So we are here amplifying their voices, that climate change responses must not just include communities like Otuabagi, but there should be special consideration for the women and for the children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amen, for that very passionate presentation of the crisis situation faced by the women in the communities that you cited. I know you've had more time, you'll tell us a lot more, but that was quite straight to the point, so thank you so much. Now, Stephen, you've been working in many communities across the region, and when we talk about climate change, we always talk about how much carbon is in the atmosphere. We hardly talk about the carbon that must be left in the ground. Now, you've worked with communities that are highly impacted by climate impacts, by oil pollution impacts. Can you tell us a bit about this and how this affects development of human capital, children, youths, health and education? Just speak to the situation.
Okay, thank you very much for that, and thank you, for setting the tone for the discussion. When we talk about oil and gas exploration and exploitation in the Niger Delta, we are talking about systemic grabbing. We are talking about systemic dislocation and exploitation of both the people and of the resources. So we are talking about a system that from the beginning, from the exploration stage, where the surveyors go to sites and they do geophysical analysis to when they begin to find the oil. We are talking about the impact as it starts from when the exploration starts to even the production time, how it affects the biodiversity. From the beginning, farmlands are destroyed. They detonate explosives that they call geophones if it's on land and hydrophones in water, and those things destroy the environment. We know that fish, they rely so much on sound for navigation, for production and all of that. And in water, when that is done, it disorients them and we have fish stranding and we have other aquatic animals destroyed. Even the trophic level is destroyed. The food chain and all of that, they are all destroyed. And to production, we have issues around pollution as the crude goes through the pipe to the different terminals and all of that. So from the beginning of exploration, from the beginning of oil to when it is taken out, we have impacts on communities, and the impact on the social lives of the community people, the impact on their livelihood. Some of them can no longer go to farms, just as has been mentioned. Some of them can no longer go for fishing anymore, and we have a serious problem at hand. And also, the issues of climate change. We have communities that have had to relocate, not because they want to relocate, not because they just wanted to move, but they were forced to move. They were forced to move by the impact of climate change, by sea level rise. We've been to a community where you see a well that is several meters high. And what the explanation you get is that, oh, the mouth of the well was on the ground level, but now it has been excavated to almost its roots, to the base. And that wasn't done by them. It was as a result of ocean encroachment. So we have communities that are faced between the impact of oil and gas exploration and production, as well as that of climate change events. And when they try, at some point when they try to even see hope, the hope that they see, or the route to recovery, is actually blocked by other impacts. And we are saying that these communities need to really be supported. These communities need to be recognized, and they need to be protected. So we are talking about an area that is occupied by extractivism, occupied by these events that are no cause of the community people. And it's our responsibility here to join in that call to ensure that justice is served to the people, and that these issues that they face are talked about, and they get the solutions that they so yearn for.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Obviously, what you're telling us includes the fact that colonial extraction does not benefit those who live in the communities and territories where extractivism takes place. So talk about human capital, children, youths, health and education. You are at ground zero when you are in a community where there's extraction without responsibility and without accountability. On this note, I just want to share information about a recent report that was issued by one of the states in the Niger Delta called the Bayelsa State Oil and Environment Commission report. We are using the report as a template for every region in the world where there's extraction without responsibility. The recommendations are can be used in any territory. So I'll just read very quickly the 10 recommendations in that report, number one. But before then, let me say what was seen in the report. The report showed that there was a per capita contamination, oil pollution in the community in the area of 1.5 barrels of crude oil per capita pollution. It also showed that there was a total hydrocarbon pollution in the water bodies 1 million times above safe limits. They found chromium about 300 times above World Health Organization standard, almost similar to what was found in Ogoni in the United Nations Environment Programme report of 2011. Now, this particular report had very clear recommendation. Number one, that in every area where there's this kind of contamination, there must be a cleanup and a recovery plan. Number two, there must be a recovery fund. And this could be part of what is called here as loss and damage, which also referred to. Number three, that there should be a recovery agency so that the funding is not in space, but also has a location. And then there should be a compensation mechanism that makes it accessible for the people to receive compensation or reparation for harm suffered. And number five is that there should be a reform of regulatory system that is more pro-people and more pro-environment and not just pro-corporations or politicians. Number six, there should be a robust dispute resolution procedure to ensure that polluters pay and give all fast and effective access to justice. And number seven, there should be an expanded role for local governments in terms of environmental management and fighting oil pollution. Number eight, there should be an enhanced scrutiny of polluting companies so that their behavior both internationally and locally should be properly looked into. And very importantly, there should be an overhaul of international oil companies' approaches to community engagement to ensure transparency, accountability, and to give the communities voice, just as we heard earlier. And finally, that there should be a legally binding and effective legacy and decommissioning regime. Right now in the world, there are thousands, if not millions, of oil wells that have never been decommissioned. And as we heard from the very first oil well in Nigeria, I personally visited oil wells number 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, and 12. These were drilled in the 1950s, abandoned in the 1970s, and they're still contaminating and polluting the environment. So there should be a regime around the entire world that wherever these wells have been drilled, there should be decommissioning at the end of their lifespan, because every oil well has a lifespan. Now, having said all that, I'm going to open up the floor for one or two questions before our friends on the panel will have their last say for this particular session. Do we have any question? Anyone has a question for the panelists? Am I seeing any hand? I see one hand up.
Thank you very much. My name is Kentebe. Looking at the Bayelsa State report and also looking at the cleanup going up on Ogoni land, could we say, because it is important to also note that the aspirations of most of the people of the Niger Delta is for the entire cleanup of the Niger Delta. Since we have a United Nations Environmental Programme doing its work in Ogoni land, could this particular Bayelsa State report serve as a template for entire cleanup of the Niger Delta? And if it serves as a template, what amount should be advisable to be put on ground for it to be kicked off? I don't know if that's good somewhere.
Thank you for your question. I see another hand, so we'll just take the question before the panelists will respond. There's another hand at the back. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roland Gam, Rosa Luxemburg, South Africa. So my question really is, we have seen some class action lawsuits, one obviously against Shell. Is there some kind of initiative from civil society organizations to do similar on behalf of the women of Bayelsa State? Something that can also be amplified and done with the help of NGOs across Africa, because I think it's long overdue, such an action, because some of these oil companies are already divesting, and we need to introduce some of these suits early before they completely disappear.
Thank you so much for that very important question. Do we have another question? I don't see any hand up. I think that's how they say it in the UN. I don't see any hand up, so I turn it over to the panelists to address the two questions, or three. One is, can the Bayelsa report be a template for other communities and other states in the region? Number two, what about class action on behalf of the women to litigate against the polluters? And then what does divestment mean in Nigeria, and how can that come up? How can we understand that in the international context?
Actually, the Bayelsa report can serve as a template for other states in the Niger Delta. But then we encourage other states to emulate what Bayelsa State has done and also conduct similar assessment in their own state. The same goes for the assessment conducted by Kebet-Kase in Otuabagi. Otuabagi is in Bayelsa State, but Kebet-Kase also has the plan to conduct similar assessment for women in other communities in the Niger Delta. I would like to use this opportunity to talk about the Iba case. Iba community has a family that woke up sometime in 2016 to find that their local hand-dug well is filled with crude oil. And they had lived with that crude oil since that 2016 till 2021, when Kebet-Kase and other civil society organizations got to know about the incident. And when we started engaging with the case, the corporation responsible went in May 2022 to seal off that local well in order to close the evidence. But then Kebet-Kase and the Obele concerned citizens had already conducted an assessment of the impact of that spill, including also assessment of taking the blood samples of community members to carry out an analysis. While conducting the assessment in the entire community, we realized that about 5 other families have the same experience, including the paramount ruler also had a similar experience. So it is important for more assessment to be carried out and also more people to join and amplify the voices of these affected communities, to have the evidence to show the injustice and genocide in the Niger Delta region. And can class action be taken to support the women in Bayelsa? Yes. Kebet-Kase has taken action. In fact, the women in Otuabagi, the community women, have also been on radio to talk about this report. The chief and youth leaders have also taken action to call on the corporation and government to address the issues and the findings of this report. In between December 4th and 5th, Kebet-Kase is going to hold a women convergence, which is our annual women convergence to mark the Niger Delta Women's Day of Action for Environmental Justice. There is going to be an action to address the findings of the assessment in Otuabagi community and also the findings of the Bayelsa report. So all this is to mobilize and build that groundswell for communities to take action and call for justice in the Niger Delta.
So we can say that we expect some litigation to come out from all this. So, Stephen.
Yeah, maybe I should add, sorry, that there are actually initiatives. Kebekase has consulted some lawyers. There is a plan to carry out litigation on these issues. But what we are experiencing is part of the issues of women lack of access to justice. But there is a plan and efforts have been made to engage in litigation. Thank you.
In fact, one of the recommendations of the Bayelsa report is that government should ensure that corporations contribute to the funding needed by poor communities to litigate against them. Yes, Stephen, you have the floor.
Yes, I'll try and make it very brief. Just to support the call that there should be a Niger Delta-wide assessment and Niger Delta-wide cleanup. And also to say that HOMEF is also carrying out an assessment in 2 communities, in Okorotip in Akwa Ibom State and in Eteo in River State. So on the issue of divestment, the way it is done, the way they're doing it in Nigeria, the corporations are moving from their onshore locations, are moving offshore to evade liabilities. And we are asking the questions, who is responsible for the historic damage that has been caused to these communities? How are these things going to be handled? You know, and there's a lot of secrecy going on in that regard as to how these divestments, how they are going about the divestments, and we are saying that we will not allow that to happen. They must be responsible for the crimes that they have committed in the region, and they must pay for it so that the people will get the justice that they deserve.
Thank you so much, Stephen and MM, for your contributions. So, on the response to the questions, I must also add that, in fact, the idea of divestment in Nigeria is actually a scam because the corporations are setting up shell companies, giving them funding to buy them out. You can't imagine such a horrible arrangement, and we are shocked that this system would even endorse that and allow it to happen. So today we're talking about a livable future beyond fossil fuels. So we're using the Niger Delta as a template, an example to show how bad things have run. So we thank you all for being here, and please keep on engaging. We're going to be at the corridor. If you have questions, follow-up questions, we can engage with that. Thank you so much, panel.
Thank you.